Welcome in to Daily Faceoff Live, your go-to source for everything hockey. Live every weekday at noon Eastern.
Happy Monday, everybody. Welcome to Daily Faceoff Live. It's Matt Larkin here, joined by my partner in crime on the Puck Poolies podcast, Stephen Ellis. We are streaming, as always, live on the Daily Faceoff YouTube channel. And, of course, the show presented by Betano. The game starts now, betano.ca, 19 plus. Please play responsibly. Stephen, we have so much to get through today. Very exciting weekend of hockey news. Are you ready, my friend?
I am. I've watched so much hockey the last couple of days. I could barely see, but that's what we do.
Okay, let's dive into it. And we know, of course, we have to start with the big headline maker of the weekend. Jay Woodcroft is out as coach of the Edmonton Oilers. The win over the Seattle Kraken on the weekend was not enough to save his job. Evidently, it was the loss to San Jose earlier in the week, that big humiliation, the Oilers 3-9-1, and he is out. So my question for you to start the show today, Stephen, is it fair? Is Jay Woodcroft the correct scapegoat in the situation for a team that, if you look at those under-the-hood metrics, was performing pretty well? Maybe a bit of bad puck luck going on.
Yeah, definitely 100%. Definitely some bad puck luck. And, you know, the team needed a change. So I understand making a coaching change. And you look at the record there, though, he was quite good for the Oilers for a guy who was in his first team as an NHL head coach. But, you know, there's a guy that could have gone out and acquired some better goaltending options for this team. And we know, Jack Campbell was kind of supposed to be the guy. And we looked in the preseason, maybe he could bounce back from last year. There's still a lot of risks associated with that. And then you see what happens. And I was still always kind of, we saw what Stuart Skinner was able to do last year as a rookie, but he was not, his numbers weren't spectacular by any means. He had to play a lot of starts that he probably shouldn't have, because you would have hoped for a better Jack Campbell. And I thought that maybe replicating that success was going to be difficult this year. And then you go and look at the goalie stats, and neither goalie is above .875 right now in save percentage. So goaltending's been an issue there. But again, you look at Ken Holland and you say, he's been the GM there since 2018. They haven't been able to get over the hump. Was he the guy that maybe had to go? You don't see a ton of GM changes early this time of year. So a coaching change made sense. They had to get someone that they could, just a fresh face in there, fresh voice that they can restart with. But gotta wonder how many days Ken Holland has left.
Yeah, it's a very fair question, and we'll get deeper into Ken Holland later in the show. But in terms of Woodcroft, I'm kind of with you. If you look at his career points percentage, 643 among coaches in NHL history with at least 100 games. That's ninth best all time, sandwiched between Bruce Cassidy and John Cooper. So Bruce Cassidy, Jay Woodcroft, John Cooper on that list. Very successful run. Of course, it was a bad start this year, but the Oilers, they're in the top of the NHL in scoring chances 5-on-5, expected goals 5-on-5, dead last in save percentage, or right near the bottom save percentage, very low in shooting percentage. So what could he really do in this situation? I also still wonder if Connor McDavid is himself. I still believe he rushed back from injury because of the team's struggles in the standings, and I think that has hurt the team as much as anyone. I still wonder if he needs to take a game or two off to sort of right the ship there. But let's look forward now, which the Edmonton Oilers are doing as well. They bring in Kris Knoblauch as their new head coach, a guy who has a long record in the AHL, track record with the Hartford Wolfpack, reasonably successful, but it doesn't really pop. Of course, the connection everyone is making, it's Connor McDavid's old coach from Erie. So I'm very curious for your take, Stephen, as a guy who's plugged into the junior scene, to the minor league scene. What is your take on this hire?
Well, he's really well respected. Talked to some of his former players just yesterday to kind of get a sense, and a lot of them are like, he's a very smart coach. He's willing to get creative and try things. And if Connor McDavid's not playing great, maybe he's like, we got to give you a bit of a rest here. But when it comes to what he brings to the table here, the Hartford Wolfpack this year have just looked really good, great numbers this year, and he's been someone that a lot around the AHL has said this guy deserves a chance in the NHL. The connection there with McDavid, that is true. That was nearly a decade ago. So it's like, at that point, it's hard to not be able to coach Connor McDavid very well in the OHL when he was putting up the numbers he did. The NHL is a different story here, and that's a great picture. I haven't seen that one. But, I think that this is, again, the fresh face that needed to be coming in here. And he's not a former NHL head coach. This is not just another recycled option here. This is someone here where they kind of brought Jay Woodcroft in for the same reason, right? When you look at Tom McClellan, Ken Hitchcock, Dave Tippa beforehand, they were all these experienced coaches. You bring in Woodcroft, and he's this fresh face, never coached the NHL, and he put up some really good numbers. I do expect him, Kris, here to do the same thing. This is a good hockey team. They need to get some good goaltending. They haven't yet. If they could figure that out, I still think they're a true contender this year. Just obviously right now it doesn't look that way. But again, I think it's an interesting hire.
Yeah, and I think you make a good point about Erie being pretty far in the rearview mirror, almost a decade. And I think the struggles of Connor Brown so far is a good reminder of that, because I think people were sort of anointing Connor Brown this breakout player for this season, this brilliant signing. I was one of those people, just assuming he would pick up that chemistry where he left off. Same with Jonathan Drouin in Colorado. So we can't just assume that connection with Knoblauch is going to be as strong as it was and automatically mean success. That said, because of the fact the Oilers' underlying numbers are so good, like I'm talking right at the top of the league in 5-on-5 dominance, I think that just positive regression in general is going to make Knoblauch look very good. It might not necessarily be his doing, but I could see a scenario where months from now he's being heralded as the architect of this turnaround, when really it's just this team that was dominating chances. The pucks finally start going in, and their goaltenders, who couldn't possibly continue to be this bad, started stopping the puck. So I do think he's going to be a quote unquote success. I don't really know if it's going to be of his own making, but I think it's going to happen. And of course, if you sort of believe in the new voice theory, right? We know there's a recent history for the mid-season coach bump. Rick Tocchet did it. Bruce Boudreau did it the year before. Daryl Sutter did it the year the Kings won the Cup. Ken Hitchcock did it with the Blues that same season. Mike Sullivan in Pittsburgh 2016. The list goes on and on and on. And I think what we've seen with the Oilers in this situation is they're trying to make the switch early, because we often see the scenario in which a team makes that switch, but they do it too late, and the turnaround isn't complete in time. And Vancouver is the prime example of that. They got hot 2 years in a row with a new coach, but maybe if they'd made the switch earlier in the season, they could have righted the ship. So Edmonton Oilers, 8 points out of a playoff spot right now. We'll see if that proves to be insurmountable, but it's going to be very interesting to see what happens over the next several months. So let's continue talking about the coaching hot seat, Stephen. We're going to head out east to where we are in Toronto. And I'm kind of wondering if we're seeing the cooling of a hot seat. The Toronto Maple Leafs struggling going into last week. They'd lost 5 of 6 after that embarrassing collapse against the Ottawa Senators last week, but they beat Calgary on Friday. They beat Vancouver on Saturday. Suddenly it's like, okay, well, they've actually won 3 out of 4. So I'm wondering for you, is Sheldon Keefe's seat actually cooling down? And are you expecting the Leafs to be okay going forward?
My question, was it really ever that hot in the first place? I feel like every start of the season, we're talking the same thing. Is this the end of Sheldon Keefe in Toronto? And then he figures it out. I think if he was in danger, he made 2 decisions that really helped this team. One was the John Klingberg, oh yeah, he's definitely for sure hurt. He's going to have to miss a game. Oh, and then he returns the next night and played actually a pretty solid game. Sitting him and then sitting Ryan Reeves were the 2 things that probably helped this team. When you look at Ryan Reeves, was not bringing a lot to this table. And I don't want to rehash the same old conversations about him, because if you follow anybody that follows the Leafs on Twitter, it's been a hot topic from the start of the season. But you take him off, you put Bob and McMahon on, and surprise, the 4th line was maybe Toronto's most effective line on Saturday night against the Vancouver Canucks. So it seems like this team's a little faster that way. And Klingberg is still a decent defenseman who can still still set things up. It's just hasn't been working this year in Toronto, and I think he just needed a bit of a break. These, one-off resets might be really good for him. Just let him okay, you made a couple of big mistakes. You've probably got the most pressure you've ever had in your career, with all due respect to Dallas, Minnesota, and Anaheim. And now the spotlight's on you, and if you make a mistake, people are going to be on you, especially given who wore jersey number 3 last year for the team and also struggled. But when it comes to Klingberg sitting, I think that was a good thing. So when it comes for the Leafs, they need good goaltending. It's been on and off. When it's good, it's good. They need better defense. I think we started to see that. And all of a sudden now, I don't think anyone's talking about Sheldon Keefe potentially losing his job there. So I think it's safe. I don't think with a team like this, you're not firing him early in the season. If anything, if it doesn't work out, you fire him over the summer. But I never thought it was that hot, to be fully honest.
Okay. I think I was the one with the fire poker in hand, stroking the flames, because I don't think Sheldon Keefe is safe yet. I'm not as confident as you are. I just think the way this team is constructed, it's going to be track meets all season long. I said that in the summer. I said it last week. I'm going to keep saying it. This team is not built to play good defense. The pieces they brought in were not just weak defensive players. They were players known to be really bad defensively. So that includes Reeves, John Klingberg, Max Domi. And I just think that Toronto is going to have to trade chances. You're going to see streaks. You're going to see slumps. And if the offense goes cold or you see an injury to one of the big four, I think you could see a major slump coming. So I don't think they're out of the woods just yet. If you look at the defensive metrics, they've regressed significantly near the bottom of the league. Expected goals, high danger chances against, their bleeding chances. Yes, fixing the fourth line helps, but it's not going to be enough. So I think the Leafs are a playoff team, but I think it's going to be a wild roller coaster all season long. I want to stick with the team that the Leafs played on the weekend, Vancouver, one of the teams they played. And I want to ask you about the Pacific Division picture now, Stephen. Obviously, the Vegas Golden Knights, they have not had any kind of hangover whatsoever. They still look dominant, but they're getting pushed by the Canucks. The LA Kings have looked pretty good so far. So I'm wondering for you, if you're trying to assess who is the biggest threat to the Vegas Golden Knights in that division right now, obviously it's not Edmonton at the moment. This or that, is it Vancouver or is it LA that you think is looking stronger right now?
Down the line, I'm still going to go with Edmonton, but right now, I know this might feel like a cop-out given they're ahead in the standings, but Vancouver to me is just a team that I know there's some underlying metrics there that may concern some people and say this team's probably just riding a bit of a high here, but they're scoring at a great rate. They've got some excellent goaltending right now from Thatcher Demko and Casey DeSmith's a pretty strong backup goalie there too. Their power play obviously looking really good, but it didn't really do a whole lot against the Toronto Maple Leafs. Near the second half of that game, we saw them score those 2 goals on the instigator penalties that the Leafs had, which unfortunately for Nick Robertson, he had to serve both of them. But you've got an elite player in Elias Pettersson. You've got an elite defenseman in Quinn Hughes. You've got an elite goalie in Thatcher Demko. That's something very few teams in this division can say right now. So for me, I think that this is a Canucks team when you look at it, they've got the skill to make this work. They just got to keep putting together on a consistent basis. As long as Philip Aronik is playing as good as he is with Quinn Hughes, that gives them one of the best defense pairings in the league. And then you put that in front of one of the best goalies in the league. Again, I like what this team's able to do right now.
Okay, see, it's always more fun if we disagree. I actually go in the Kings' direction. I do like what Vancouver's bringing to the table. I did pick them to make the playoffs. I think they're going to regress a little bit because the shooting percentage has been really strong. Thatcher Demko has been bailing them out quite a bit. Like Their defensive play kind of reminds me of the Jets in the peak Connor Hellebuck years. They're giving up a lot of chances. So I think there's going to be some regression. The Kings are almost the opposite. They've been really dominant territorially. I think they're built to last. They're just a really good defensive hockey team. They're really deep. Now you have Pierre-Luc Dubois on your third line, so you can roll 3 dangerous lines at the moment. Obviously, goaltending is going to be a question. So they're sort of the inverse of the Canucks. Cam Talbot's been good so far. Phoenix Copley's been really not good. I mean, really not good so far. I just don't know if it's going to be sustainable for Talbot at his age. He's had some injury problems. So I could see that team running into a dilemma down the line where maybe they have to make a trade. But overall, just in terms of the team structure, I like what LA is bringing to the table in the long term. Vancouver, though, what a story. They're so much fun to watch. Their top end players are just very, very exciting at the moment, especially Quinn Hughes' magical season. Stephen, we got to go back to the Oilers. It's just such a big story. So we have to bring in a heavy hitter today for our next segment, the All 32. We're going to get someone with a little knowledge from the inside. Jason Gregor is coming up next. The All 32 is delivered by DoorDash. Make DoorDash your holiday hack this holiday season. For a limited time, our Canadian listeners get 25% off and 0 delivery fees on their first order of $15 or more when you download the DoorDash app and enter the code NATION25. Okay, we are very pleased to be joined by our friend, co-host of the DFO Rundown podcast, host of the Jason Gregor Show on Sports 1440, our friend with the excellent-looking spectacles, Jason Gregor. How you doing, my friend?
I'm good, fellas. You?
Oh my God, our heads are spinning, so I can't imagine what it's like in your neck of the woods. And I really just want to get to it because there's so much to ask you. I guess let's start with just your sense of the thinking behind firing Woodcroft after a win. Was it just that the damage was done and there was nothing he could have done, even if they won 10-0 on Saturday night? Was it just a foregone conclusion that he was out at that point?
Yeah, Ken Holland and Jeff Jackson, they outlined the fact that, the decision was made prior. And to me, that actually makes sense. If you say, well, we'll give the coach one more game, what does that even mean? You're either firing him, he's good enough for your team for the next 10 games, or he's not good enough for your team. So they had made the decision after the San Jose loss. They had to, negotiate with the New York Rangers to allow Knoblauch out of his contract with them in the AHL. And so they made that decision. They obviously didn't tell anyone until they got home on Sunday morning after the flight and had a meeting with Jay Woodcroft and Dave Manson. And then they were let go. And obviously Kris Knoblauch, he was coaching Saturday night in Hartford and then flew to Edmonton and was here for a press conference on Sunday. And, now we go another coaching change in Edmonton. Stop me. Can you guys give me any insight? How do you cover this? I've never done this before. I don't know how to cover a new coaching change in Edmonton. Obviously I'm being facetious, but it's, at some point it can't always be on the head coach. There's no question. Jay Woodcroft and Dave Manson weren't the only reason why the Oilers are off to a terrible start. They play a small part in it for sure. They're not excused from everything, but they aren't the major reason the Oilers have started off poorly. I heard you guys earlier. I agree with you wholeheartedly. Like Kris Knoblauch's in a very good situation, kind of like Jay Woodcroft was, because when Woodcroft came in, the Oilers were underachieving, and then they got hot and they played really well under Woodcroft. They had the sixth most wins in the NHL in 132 games. That's pretty solid. But the problem that here before Woodcroft came is the problem that's still here after he's left. Their inability to play consistently defensively and reduce their goals against. Like right now, their offense is terrible, guys. Connor McDavid is 130th in scoring right now. What the hell's going on? So that's going to change, but defensively, and that's where, to me, this is more of a player issue. We've tried. There's been lots of coaches that have tried. None of them bought in. So eventually the players, they either got to get it through their thick skull that they need to play consistent. They've shown they can do it at times, guys, but they just, for whatever reason, can't do it regularly.
So I tried to offer Matthew Knies in my hockey pool for Connor McDavid because right now they're kind of almost equal players when you look at the numbers. But Jason, Jeff Jackson is in charge here, and now Connor McDavid's Erie coach is the NHL coach. So is this a kind of like a LeBron James situation where he's kind of running the team?
I know it looks that way, and it's fair to question that, right? The Jeff Jackson one, you wondered why. Now, Jeff Jackson, former NHL player, former NHL assistant GM, like he's been in all facets of the game. So I think as the CEO, he understands he can see every element. Like when you run a company, the best guys aren't the ones who just, their dad gives them the company. They start at the bottom and work their way up and learn all about it. Well, Jeff Jackson's played as a player. He's done a lot of different jobs in the NHL, both on management side and then the other. So I think, it made sense in that regard. I don't expect him to be the GM when Ken Holland leaves. If he does, then we got a bigger problem because to me, that would be a little bit of a head scratcher. The Knoblauch hiring, he did coach Connor McDavid, but that's like he started with Connor McDavid 11 years ago, right? And Knoblauch said him and Connor, we've exchanged the odd text here the last few years, but you guys talk to a lot of NHL players. Ask them how many times they talked to their junior coach from 8 years ago. He knows him, but I would like to think that they weren't like, well, let's find any coach who's coached Connor. Knoblauch was pretty highly sought after. I know he's been a finalist in other coaching jobs. So he's not the one here that's kind of a head scratcher. It's more that Paul Coffey's an assistant coach. That's the one, he's an advisor to the owner, guys. There's no one I've ever seen as an advisor to the owner, and he's an assistant coach. I don't believe he's going to be the assistant coach long-term. I think he's come in here as a little bit of a mess. Okay, hey, we're going to try to help Knoblauch be successful. There's not going to be any players trying to, influence a rookie head coach here. And I think maybe that's what Coffey's here. Now, Coffey, like Marty St. Louis, yes, he doesn't have NHL coaching experience, but the guy's a Hall of Famer. He's smart. He knows the game. I think he can help calm things down maybe, but that's the one that's a little bit more odd because you look at the dynamics of the organization. Guys, I don't look at every team. I've covered the league for a long time. I can never remember an advisor to the owner also being an assistant coach.
Yeah, really good insight. And it just seems like Paul Coffey is someone who doesn't seem that comfortable or that interested in holding down that post for a long time. So we'll see what happens. One more for you, Jason. You mentioned that the issue possibly is a player problem. And who's the person that puts those chess pieces on the board? It's Ken Holland. And if you look at the life cycle of your typical GM, usually you get one coach firing. It's not that common that you're there for multiple. So how much runway do you think Ken Holland has left, in your opinion, as GM?
Well, he's in the final year of his contract, guys. And I think Ken Holland is I don't think he'll come back. Maybe he would be a consultant for a year or two if they wanted him. He wanted to do it, but I think he's looking to move on after this season. Jeff Jackson doesn't have a ton of experience. Ken Holland has a lot of experience. And I actually think the team he's built, guys, when I say it's a player problem, now the goaltending is the one thing that falls on the GM without question. That to me. But when I look at the team and the players and the skill he's brought in at forward and defense from the team he inherited, Edmonton's got a lot of skill, right? Like they're as talented as a lot of other teams, excluding the goaltending position. That's the one where the Jack Campbell signing, not only $5 million, but for 5 years. If you would have said it was a 2-year or 3-year deal, maybe you can live with it. But that's a massive egg on the face of the GM. There's no way to sugarcoat that. But guess what? When you make an error, you can sit and you can worry about it, or you can say, guess what? I got to fix it. So now that's 100% on the GM, and he's got to fix that. And, it's not easy. Like, look around the league, guys. Like, goaltending from year to year. You guys study analytics and stats just as in depth, probably way more than I do. Look from year to year. Who would have thought Gustafsson would be this bad? Hell, Ilya Sorokin's coming into Edmonton with a .907 save percentage behind a defensive-minded team, right? Like, goaltending, man, it is the most unpredictable one. However, I wouldn't have done a 5-year contract with a guy who was never a proven regular starter. That's the issue here, and that's the one that 100% is on Holland.
Very well said. I love the energy coming from Jason today, the strong conviction in your takes there. It's what we need. We needed that firm voice to help guide us through this stormy time in Edmonton. Always appreciate it. Reminder, everybody, check out the Jason Gregor Show. Jason, it's 2 to 6 on weekdays. Am I correct?
That's right. Monday to Friday on Sports 1440. And right now, guys, sports talk radio host, this is like the easiest time ever. There's lots of emotions running high in Edmonton. They're fired up. And, there's another new coach in town, and the fans are curious to see. Can the Oilers, there's only 2 teams in the NHL, fellas, who have never won back-to-back games this year, the Oilers and the Blackhawks. The Oilers will try to become the 31st team tonight.
Will be very fun to check it out. Thanks again, Jason. And that's a wrap on another edition of the All 32 delivered by DoorDash. Okay, Stephen, it's time for the Ask DFO inbox question. And oh, baby, as Bob Cole would say, Connor Bedard is hot right now. That's 6 goals in 4 games. He was bringing it yesterday for the highlight reel. And he's actually on pace now for 57 goals, which would be the most by a rookie since Teemu Selanne had 76, 92, 93. So, Stephen, I want to know, as someone who's studied Bedard as long as anybody, how many goals do you think he finishes with this season?
I don't think he's going to hit 57 because – first off, it'd be so awesome if he even hit the 50 this year. I'm going right now at 48. I think he's going to, and that just felt like the gut number to me. I had to pick because, with how good he's playing, I think teams are going to start to figure out how to defend against him. He continues to find ways to amaze. You look at this play here, the way he stole the puck and was able to score there. It's just, he's pulling off things we just, for as good as a player he was, we still weren't expecting. He's thriving in the moment here, but I do think as teams start to face him for the second, third time throughout the year, they're going to figure out that, okay, we could probably just take a run at him. We could try doing all these things here. Yeah, he's got the speed and the tenacity to really pull through and score those goals, but I don't know. I can't see him doing 50 this year. Now, if he did, that's one of the best rookie seasons I've ever seen since watching hockey. But because when you look at back, I started watching like 02, 03, and you look in the last 10 years, 15 years, you're not getting 50 goal scorer rookies. But this guy's a special talent, man. There's not much else I could say. We're watching greatness here. And it's funny. I don't think anyone expected McDavid to pass over the great Connor baton this quickly. Obviously not. But right now, I didn't expect Bedard to be this much better.
Yeah, I think I'm with you that he's going to fall short of 50. Also, the shooting percentage is really high. It's over 20%. I do think that Bedard, his release is so deadly. He's going to be a high percentage shooter for his entire career. But if I did a little math, put on my science or my mathematician hat, 3.31 shots per game. I had him maybe drooping to 15%, a little regression the rest of the year. If we did that math for 69 more games, I think he's going to finish with 43 goals. Would still be the most since Ovechkin in 05-06 in terms of rookie goal scoring. Very impressive stuff. It's time now, Stephen, for our Betano daily betting segment brought to you by Betano. 19 plus, please play responsibly. And we're going to bring in Oilersnation producer Patrick Puff to do his best Tyler Yaremchuk impression. Tyler, what do you got for us today, my friend?
Yeah, maybe I have been hanging out with Tyler a little too much because I got a shot prop for you today. I got two options for you. One, not so safe. One a little on the safer side. We'll start with Matthew Barzal. That's the safe option at -139. I like that he's over 2.5. He's got an average of 3.5 shots per game this year, 45 on the season, coming in against an Oilers team not great defensively to start the season, and in the last five games, he's got 15 shots. So I like that one for Matthew Barzal. If you want to get a little risky, a little more bang for your buck, I like Zach Hyman coming in off a natural hat trick in the first period against the Seattle Kraken. 4 shots in his last 2 games, and in his last 2 games against the Islanders, he's got 5 shots and 10 shots. The Oilers like to shoot. We know it. A little riskier, though, because the Islanders are a little more defensive. So, guide your risk there if you want a little safer option. Matthew Barzal, -139. I personally like Hyman. I don't like that it's over 3.5, but the Oilers like to shoot. We know that. And then we're going to jump over to the first goal of the game. I like the Seattle Kraken in this one, +105. Decent odds there. The reason I picked this, the Seattle Kraken, in the last 10 games, 8 of them, they have scored first 2 of those against the Colorado Avalanche. They've got some confidence coming into this game with the win against the Avs 4-3 on Thursday. I don't see them stopping. This team likes to come out hot. They shoot lots. They've got legs. I like Kraken to score first in this one.
Okay, good stuff. And hey, maybe Seattle's still living rent free in Colorado's head after that playoff loss last year. That's right. Yeah, and I like the picks for the Oilers Islanders game. I think Oilers are going to be shot out of a cannon tonight, and if they jump out to an early lead, the Islanders are going to have to be playing catch up, which means a lot of shots for Matt Barzal. Thank you so much, Patrick.
Absolutely.
Okay, Stephen, we're going to finish it off with a little bit of garbage time now, and I know it was quite the story. I can't remember an example of this happening in recent memory, but right after a game, supposedly Nikita Zadorov, the big hulking defenseman of the Calgary Flames, after he loses to the Leafs through his agent Dan Milstein, requests a trade immediately. And of course, for a player of that size who can play that shutdown role, there will be plenty of potential suitors. So I'm curious for you, who is the best possible fit for Zadorov?
I just hope for everyone's sake he's traded soon, because I feel like the discourse around him has been absolutely nuts. You'd think he's like a top defenseman in the league with how much everybody wants him. But the team that I'm looking at, obviously a lot are saying Toronto because that's what the headlines came out at saying. Vancouver. Realistically, the Oilers could use them, but there's no way Calgary would do that. The one I'm looking at there is the New Jersey Devils, a team that I like their defensive depth. But, this is a team that could still go all the way this year. I know they're not super high in the standings, but it's still early going. And we know that you don't need to be number 1 in the league to win the Stanley Cup. Actually, that's typically a bad thing. But he'd be a nice step up from Brendan Smith, who doesn't score, is older, doesn't move very well. They'd have to make up a bit of cap space to make that work. I think roughly around $2 million to make that work. But that, there's less pressure for a guy like Simon Nemec to come out there and have to play in an injury situation. You can have Zadorov there, who can be this physical defenseman, who can play the shutdown defense. And, if he's on the third pairing, that's a scary third pairing all of a sudden. I believe it would be him and Luke Hughes type thing. So I would like that as a personal fit. I don't know about you, but that's what I would do.
Yeah, it's interesting. He'd almost be like a rich man's Kevin Ball in that system with New Jersey. So I like that fit. Vancouver was the team I had in mind just because I think they still need to clean up their defensive play. Like I said earlier in the show, Demko's been masking it a little bit. And Carson Soucy's been getting banged up, I think more than once this season, if I remember correctly. So I think you could have some nice insurance. You can never have too many defensemen, as the saying goes, especially come playoff time. So I like Zadorov as a fit in Vancouver. Well, Stephen, garbage time brought to you by Wendy's. Wendy's is letting you win real food with your fantasy teams this year with the Wendy's Daily Faceoff Survivor Pool. Sign up now at dailyfaceoffsurvivor.com. And Stephen and Patrick, that's it for today's show. Thank you so much to you both. We'll be back, of course, with another show tomorrow at noon Eastern. Thank you for watching and listening.
Thanks for tuning in to Daily Faceoff Live. Make sure you hit the subscribe button to never miss an episode.